In my 7th year, I was sold into a brothel. The madam deemed me too old and wanted to sell me off. The bamboo steed I secretly loved for many years came to ransom me, saying he would take me as his concubine. Yet I cleverly refused him, using the money I saved over the years to buy myself out, and then I opened a small clinic. My sisters couldn't understand. You've admired Bùi Đăi Quân for so many years. Why won't you accept him? I smiled and replied, a courtesan sells to many. A concubine sells to only one. They're both selling anyway. From now on, I just want to live for myself and not sell myself anymore. On Thuong Nguyen night, while I was with my maid watching lanterns, I happened to see Zhang Yin buying a flower lantern for a girl beside him. The girl seemed about 16, with slim eyebrows and high cheeks, not particularly beautiful, just somewhat elegant. But her haughty demeanor clearly showed she had been pampered from a young age. The jewelry on her head was all dazzling and expensive, signaling she was a young lady from a noble family. Zhang Yin bent down, handing her the white rabbit lantern, the candlelight illuminating his handsome face like a painting, his eyes twinkling like stars with a gentle smile, making the girl absent-mindedly stare, her face flushed. It was truly rare. In front of me, Zhang Yin was always indifferent and sardonic. Turns out he could be this gentle too. I stood watching from afar for a long time, until the girl happily ran to the riverbank to release her lantern. Then I approached and stood beside Zhang Yin asking, "Whose daughter is this?" Zhang Yin was not surprised to see me and casually replied, "The only daughter of the Minister of Household, named Lu Kinsuan." He paused and continued, "My fiancée, Minister of Household, second-rank official managing the entire department. Also, Zhang Yin's superior." I fell silent amid the bustling crowd on the street. I felt so isolated, as if none of this concerned me. "What about me?" I softly asked. Zhang Yin finally turned to look at me. The eyes that were gentle as spring water just moments ago lost their tenderness, revealing a hard coldness. The corners of his mouth lifted into a tiny mocking smile as he looked down at me. "Lin Kyo, I cannot marry a courtesan as a wife." I lifted my head to meet his gaze, suddenly feeling a fleeting confusion. Lin Kyo is not my name. I'm called Luke and Tuesday. Ever since childhood, Zhang Yin always called me in Tuesday and Tuesday. Our marriage certificate bears the name Luke and Tuesday. Lin Kyo is a stage name the madam gave me. Now he, like other patrons, calls me Lin Kyo. The name Luke and Tuesday was given to me by my father. When he gave it to me, my father said he hoped I'd be healthy and safe with every passing year in age, but perhaps he was disappointed. At 13, my family and Zhang Yin's family were falsely accused, our assets confiscated. My father risked his life to get me out. He told me to run quickly, but I couldn't bear to leave Zhang Yin tearfully sneaking through the dog hole in the Zhang family backyard to find him. The Luke family and Zhang family were old acquaintances. I grew up with him, and our marriage was arranged since childhood. I cried until I could no longer see clearly, my entire body trembling with fear, but my first instinct was that I couldn't abandon Zhang Yin. Finally, I found him in the wine cellar, lying there unmoving, eyes vacant. I pulled him out with all my strength, following the path my father instructed, getting him out of the city, and arranged for him to stay in an abandoned temple. Who would have thought he'd develop a fever and fall unconscious that very night? I spent the last of my money to find a barefoot doctor in a nearby village. He looked at him and shook his head. No good. Curing this would require ginseng, costing at least 20 liang of silver. Better to buy a cheap straw mat, wrap him up, and abandon him on a mountain. Both of us were dirt poor, with nothing on us. Watching Zhang Yin's breathing become increasingly weak, I bit my lip and sold myself to the brothel for 20 liang of silver to buy medicine for him. Zhang Yin awoke. By then, the madam had given me the stage name Lin Kyo. It was the first time I saw Zhang Yin cry. He didn't cry during the tragic deaths of his parents, nor when he was critically ill, but he cried when he heard the madam call me Lin Kyo. The 15-year-old, biting his lip like a beast driven to its last stand, gripped my hand, tears streaming down his face. He took out her marriage certificate from his chest, his voice hoarse yet promising with each word. "And Tuesday, I will ransom you. I will marry you." Thinking back, it seemed like just yesterday, but it was 7 years ago. Over the past 7 years, I've fallen from a noble lady to a courtesan, using the money earned from selling myself to help Zhang Yin change his name and identity, allowing him to study. From then on, he stopped being Zhang Yin. He assumed the name Bùi So. He passed the imperial examination, becoming a scholar, ultimately standing at the top of the court examination. Later, he gained the emperor's favor, becoming a champion scholar. He entered the Ministry of Household, achieving great fame and success, with a vast future ahead. But he never mentioned marrying me again. "Who are you?" came a woman's voice from behind. I turned around, and upon recognizing my face, Luke and Swan immediately looked cautious. Just as I was about to speak, she looked me up and down, a smirk forming on her lips. "I know you. You're the harlot from New Wai Lao. Aren't you Lin Kyo? I heard you kept pestering Master Bùi. Turns out it's true. A woman used by thousands dares to flaunt herself. Truly shameless." The Minister of Household, having been injured and only having a daughter at the age of 50, naturally spoiled her utterly. Luke and Swan's arrogance was famous across the capital. I didn't want to argue with her, silently intending to leave. "Stop!" Luke and Swan shouted angrily. "Who do you think you are to ignore me? Did you not hear me speaking?" I lowered my head calmly, stating, "Of course, I heard the young lady's words, but I don't know where this pestering came from. I indeed am a courtesan, but I never held a knife to force young Master Bùi to seek me out. He paid. I entertained. That's perfectly normal. Why call it that? Is it shameless? Your tongue is indeed sharp." Luke and Swan stepped forward, gripping my chin tightly, her eyes filled with envy and malice. "You look just like a fox. No wonder you're so good at seducing men," she coldly said. "Smash her face for me. Let's see what she uses to perform without that face." I frowned, surprised that such a noble young lady could speak so vulgarly and act so unreasonably. But the maid behind her quickly stepped forward, grabbed my face, and slapped me hard. The young maid Thursday, due behind me, wanted to rush in and save me, but she was held back tightly by Luke and Swan's servants. The maid's hands were calloused, each slap delivered with full force, and after just a few hits, my face was swollen, my eyes dazed, and blood trickled from the corner of my mouth. Thursday Dew cried for help from Bùi So. "Young Master Bùi, please save my lady, young Master Bùi." But Bùi So just stood there, coldly watching, not saying a word. It wasn't until I was beaten to the point of being unable to stand that he finally spoke, his tone indifferent. "That's enough." Luke and Swan frowned. "Are you heartbroken for her?" Bùi So just smiled, gently adjusting her hair. "I just feel that arguing with someone like her would damage your status." Luke and Swan smiled contentedly, signaling the maid to release me. My body went limp, my cheeks throbbed with pain, and my ears buzzed. I clung to Thursday Dew's arm, refusing to collapse. Bùi So quickly left with Luke and Swan, not looking back at me even once. That night, Bùi So came to see me. Initially, I didn't want to receive him, but the brothel owner had already taken his money and wouldn't let me refuse. In the first 2 years after selling myself, the brothel owner thought my looks were rare and invited many to teach me poetry, music, painting, aiming to make me a star to earn big. But just when she wanted me to receive guests, Bùi So had passed the imperial exams. He kept me for himself, not allowing me to see anyone else. Though the brothel owner was unhappy, now he had become favored by the crown prince. Everyone saw his bright future, and she didn't dare offend him, having to reluctantly accept. As soon as he entered the room, Bùi So grabbed my chin, looking me over, then pulled a vial of medicine from his chest to apply to my face. The top-quality treatment was cool, soothing the burning pain. I turned away, refusing to let him apply it. Bùi So's face darkened, his grip tightened, and I broke out in a cold sweat from the pain, but still didn't turn back. "All right." He rarely softened his voice. "She has such a status. Her father is second-rank official, her mother a princess. She grew up in luxury, and what status do you have to argue with her? You should refine your character. You still think you're a noble lady?" I was stunned momentarily, suddenly remembering how arrogant I was as a child, stubbornly wanting what I desired, pushing into the water any young lady I disliked who made me lose face. My mother, mad with anger, intended to punish me with family discipline, but couldn't bear to when holding a wooden rod, grinding her teeth, pointing at my forehead and scolding. How did I give birth to such a mischievous child with no fear of heaven or earth? What'll be done with you in the future? My father stood aside begging, "Come now." And Tuesday didn't mean it. Clearly others made it difficult for her first. Besides, what's wrong with having no fear of heaven or earth? She has her father here. Who would dare bully her? My mother angrily retorted. "Spoil her. Then let's see if you can spoil her for life." Prophetic words indeed. I stared down at my toes, suddenly feeling choked. When the brothel owner beat and forced me to receive guests, I didn't cry. When Luke and Swan had me beaten, I didn't cry. But now I couldn't stop my eyes from stinging. If my parents were still alive to see me like this, they would be heartbroken. In the past, a fallen hair of mine concerned them greatly. Now my face was swollen from being beaten, but there's no one to feel distressed or stand up for me. Bùi So knew how to stab at the heart. I said nothing, Bùi So's face becoming more displeased. To him, his initiative to visit me was a concession. I had always been gentle and obedient to him, unlike today. "Lin Kyo, don't be ungrateful. That's enough." I looked down at my shoes. All right. Bùi So sneered, throwing the vial to the ground. Then he abruptly stood up, flicked his sleeves, and left. Thursday, Du carefully approached behind me, soothingly rubbing my shoulders. "Miss," she sighed, "why did you anger young Master Bùi? He's your only hope now. You've admired him for so many years, and he just promised to buy your freedom." I touched my swollen face, glanced towards the box by the bed. I know Bùi So is angry. All my life, I've been the one chasing after him, comforting him, catering to him. After Thursday Du left, I opened the box, taking out the banknotes hidden in a secret compartment. 1,800 taels, money I've saved over the years. I didn't think of letting Bùi So buy my freedom. Back then when I sold myself, it wasn't solely for Bùi So. I knew a slightly beautiful woman like me couldn't live alone without support. Bùi So wasn't just my betrothed, but also a talented, learned man capable of advancing in officialdom. He was my only hope for survival. 20 taels of silver from selling myself, it was my vow to him. Indeed, Bùi So remembered my devotion, rising swiftly through the ranks, and he protected me at the brothel. The brothel owner didn't dare force me to take guests. I only had to play some music for visitors, never lacking food or clothing. Occasionally, when guests caused trouble, Bùi So would intervene. In truth, I once thought of being with Bùi So, even as a concubine. Years ago, when my father struggled to get me out of that place, he only said to me, "In Tuesday, survive. If you live, there's hope. Just by living, one day our family's unjust case will be redressed and the wrongs against our 72 family members cleared." So even though Bùi So was always cold to me, I gave him my full affection. Everyone knew I was infatuated with Bùi So, hoping he'd buy my freedom. Even Bùi So thought so. He believed I loved him, that now as a courtesan, I could only wait for him to free me. That was supposedly my only path. At times I thought the same. In my current status, I could never be Bùi So's main wife, only hoping to rely on past affections to be his concubine, which seemed the best escape. But now I no longer think so. Bùi is about to marry Miss Liu. With her capabilities, I'm afraid I'd be tormented to death if I entered their household. Would Bùi stand up for me then? Perhaps just stand and watch today. I gripped the check tightly in my hand. When my parents were alive, they always taught me one thing. There's no one trustworthy in this world except oneself. Over the years, I've provided for Bùi to study and exchanged all the jewelry and gifts guests gave me in his silver, just so that if I can no longer rely on Bùi, I'd have an escape plan. That moment has come. Suddenly, my food and drink are reduced. In the past, I stayed in the best room in the building, chose the finest jewelry, and ate meals worth several ounces of silver. But now, the madam smiles and asks me to move out, leaving the space for the most famous beauty of the building. My only servant, Thursday Dew, remains, and even daily bathwater isn't brought anymore. Thursday Dew and I must make fires ourselves, and the madam scolds us for wasting wood. Even our meals are the leftovers of others. I have to spend my own money to have Luke Chow go out and buy food. Previously, everyone in the building welcomed me with cheerful faces, and even the madam had to give me some respect. But now, those who envied me begin to slip into treachery. The lead courtesan blatantly takes all my fine clothes away. When I protested, she covered her mouth to laugh and said, "These clothes are bought by the building. When were they ever yours? Lin Kyo, you don't still think you're the beauty in front of Master Bùi, do you? Out of respect for Master Bùi, I once referred to you respectfully as sister, and you thought you were something great." Before leaving, she snatched the clothes and scoffed. "Sister, don't blame me. Many people seek me nowadays. Everywhere requires dressing beautifully, while you, now old and weak without clients, keeping these things is just wasteful." After she left, Thursday Dew stomped angrily. Just flattering before, always calling sister, now turns her back as if she doesn't know anyone, truly worthless. I wave my hand. It's okay. If she likes them, let her take them. I knew clearly that this must be Bùi's intention, the punishment he gave to me. He wants to punish my disobedience. He's telling me that without him, I'm nothing, just the kind of person trampled by others like a dog. But I never expected him to be even more ruthless than I imagined. The next day, the madam told me that once my wounds healed, I would have to entertain guests. It made me realize that Bùi had revoked his protection over me. The madam wore fake red flowers, pretending a cheerful smile. "I've told you, you can't rely on men, and now don't you have to entertain guests just like everyone else? Serve the customers well, earn a lot of silver, and keep the silver in your hands because it's truly yours." In a daze, I walked into the room, but as I passed the hallway, I heard a painful scream beside me. That scream was very familiar. It was from Luke Chow, my best friend in the building. I peeked through the door crack, only to see a group of men drinking and listening to music, accompanied by several women. Among them was a man with a pale face, full of wickedness, pressing down on Luke Chow, his eyes looking at her like a venomous snake. To the two of the Thua and Marquis house, I immediately recognized him. He was infamous in brothels around the capital. Because he was impotent, his methods varied, and it was said that the women who died in bed with him couldn't be counted on two hands. However, he was generous, compensating with money every time, so no one ever cared. Luke Chow's eyes brimmed with tears of fear, about to overflow, but she was gagged, unable to cry for help. If she were taken away by the two of Thua and Marquis house today, she might not see the sunlight tomorrow. I hesitated at the door for a long time, and when I saw Luke Chow about to be dragged away, I gritted my teeth, pushed the door open, and knelt before the two. "The two Gia, Luke Chow's body is unclean. It might spoil your mood. Please let her go." The two, interrupted from his amusement, turned angrily to look at me, eyes flashing with anger. Then his lips curled into a smile, looking at me up and down, appearing interested. He forcefully pushed Luke Chow aside, stepped forward to grab my chin. Bùi Đăi woman, huh? Even a hypocrite like him has a good eye. If you don't let her go, then you'll be the substitute. Today I want to try the taste of Bùi Đăi woman. Then he intended to take me away. As I glanced around, I saw a man in black sitting in the main seat. Watching me with interest, I bit my lip tightly without saying anything. But as the two reached to touch my clothes, the man suddenly spoke. He said coldly, "Trong Lo, you're really bothersome. Get out." The two immediately froze. A hint of worry flashed in his eyes. Then he quickly forced a flattering smile, unable to hide the fear. Since the commanding envoy doesn't want to see me, I'll leave at once. Then he decisively stood up and left without further ado. Others also hurriedly found excuses to leave one by one. In a moment, the room was left with just me and the man. He came up to me, looking down. From above, "Why did you save her? Aren't you afraid?" I looked up at An Tue, hoarsely replied, "Afraid." An Tue lowered his head, his thin lips forming a faint smile, hard to see. "I thought you were born brave, never knowing fear." The first time I met An Tue was in the building. Only he didn't come to play, he came to kill. He wore a flying fish uniform, drew a sword from beneath his black cloak without hesitation, and chopped off the head of a man. The women in the building were horrified, their faces white, while the guests trembled in fear, some even scared to the point of wetting themselves. I heard someone mutter, "Why has Pluto returned?" Later I learned he was the renowned commanding envoy of the Cam, YV, who, just past his youth, held the power of life and death and led the entire Cam, YV. An Tue's father was a general who died in battle, and his mother, the emperor's sister, suicided for her husband, leaving only one child behind. He was the emperor's nephew, also the most trusted confidant. The emperor even granted him special privileges, allowing retribution before reporting. Rumors described An Tue as having a fearsome, green face and sharp teeth, standing tall at 8 feet, but witnessing firsthand, he appeared as a charming young nobleman, handsome and tall. However, his face still showed fresh blood streaks. The sword at his waist hadn't yet been cleaned, and his black eyes swept over, giving the impression of being torn apart at the spot. The second time meeting him, he came with officials to listen to music. It was evident everyone feared him, especially the women who once witnessed him kill, trembling without daring to approach. Ultimately, only I stepped beside him, lowered my head, and poured wine for him. That day, I silently sat by him, waited till his glass was empty, and poured it full without saying much nor avoiding. When leaving, An Tue glanced at me. His tone unchanged asked, "What's your name?" I respectfully answered, "Lord, my name is Lin Kyo." He nodded, left a bag of money, and departed. Since then, whenever An Tue finished killing, he'd seek me out, sometimes to drink, sometimes to listen to me play the pipa. Occasionally I played wrong notes, and he wasn't angry. He never behaved like others, didn't exploit me, nor desired me, just seemed to come for some songs, but always left generous rewards when leaving. Among my 1,800 taels of silver, more than half was given by him. Today, I dare to enter and save Luke Chow because I saw him here. I was betting on whether he held any special feelings for me. It seems I bet correctly. Why didn't you ask me for help earlier? An Tue asked, his tone steady. I kneeled on the ground, gazing at the gold-threaded shoes before me. You can save me once, but you can't save me forever. Above me, he stood silent for a long time. Just when I thought An Tue was angry, he suddenly spoke, his tone unclear with emotion. "What if I said I could save you forever?" Astonished, I raised my head, thinking I misheard. An Tue said no more, turned and walked out. The madam suddenly told me I no longer had to entertain guests, just like before, only needed to play music. I thought Bùi, so was involved again, didn't ponder much. Thursday Du cheerfully told me Bùi, so was here. At that time, I was counting my checks. I hastily hid the checks before he entered the room. Bùi, so sat at the table, poured his own tea, without looking at me, said, "Have you thought it over these days?" I nodded, thought thoroughly already. He thought I had softened, his tone also mellowed, finally willing to lift his head to glance at me. "Since young, you've been stubborn like this, not willing to suffer a loss until you learn the lesson. At the end of the month, I will marry Luke and Swan. She likes to be jealous, and I must respect her father." He placed a check for 2,000 taels on the table. "You know your status by now. Currently, I can't bring you to live in a residence, but I found a house for you. You'll stay outside. If there's a child, I'll take it to Luke and Swan to raise, so the child can have a good identity. Later, if circumstances allow." I interrupted him. "Bùi, so you've thought too much. I don't need you to redeem my life." Rarely seeing Bùi so surprised for a moment, he quickly steadied himself, frowned, and asked, "What?" I smiled, pushing the check back. "I said I won't go with you. Do you have someone else willing to redeem you, then?" He asked instinctively. I shook my head. "Are you still angry about that day?" "No." Bùi So's eyes turned sarcastic, lips curling coldly. "Lin Kyo, I know you've been stubborn since young, but now you're no longer a noble lady. You should wake up, if not with me. Do you think you'll be a courtesan forever? Later you might intend to sell yourself, but no one would buy." His words always lacked warmth, but this time I wasn't angry. I lowered my head to drink tea. "All right then," suppressing anger, Bùi So said, "Later, I won't let Luke and Swan meet or trouble you anymore. If there's a child, you wish to raise it yourself, then keep it, all right?" I was a bit surprised, not expecting Bùi So to compromise, but I still refused. "No need." Bùi So's face anger. "What do you want?" "I don't want anything." I stood up, looking out the window. The rows of roadside trees had sprouted in the springtime, a distant bright green. I whispered, "Bùi So, I don't want to be entangled with you anymore. Years ago, to save you, I had to sell myself as a prostitute. But over the years, you have also helped me many times, so we can consider it as neither of us owe each other. From now on, we'll go our separate ways. When there's a meeting, there'll be a farewell." Bùi So suddenly stood up, grabbing my chin. His eyes were blazing. For a moment, I thought he was going to hit me, but he only glared at me, then smirked and said in restrained anger, "Good, good, go our separate ways." He abruptly pushed me away, as if discarding something filthy. "Let's see how you'll survive without me." "Wait." I called him back. Bùi So stopped, turning his head back with contempt. "Regret already?" I took out our marriage certificate from my chest, handed it to him. "Returning the marriage certificate to you. It has no meaning from now on." Bùi So's eyes showed anger, as if a storm was coming. He held the marriage certificate tightly in his hand, laughing in anger. "Luke and Tuesday, the first time he's called my name. I'll wait for the day you beg me." Bùi So left. I flipped through the pile of banknotes. 2,000 taels. Finally, I've gathered enough. I was about to find the madam when Thursday Dew suddenly burst in, with an expression both joy and worry. "Miss, someone has come to redeem you." I was stunned. These years, because of matters related to Bùi So, few guests dare to seek me, mostly just to hear me play music. Who would spend such a large amount to redeem me? Thursday Dew said in confusion, "It's Mr. Veen." I couldn't believe Veen Huyen Thua had come to redeem me. After calming down, I still respectfully invited Veen Huyen Thua in, sincerely thanked him, and then rejected his offer. Veen Huyen Thua was slightly surprised, but quickly returned to calm. "I thought you intentionally approached me to make me redeem you." So he's seen through it long ago. From the first meeting, I've had intentions, and with each interaction, I've gradually drawn him closer. I would ask him to buy small items when he's in a good mood. Would ask him to tell stories from the streets. Ask him to help find lost music sheets. In the eyes of others, he's a murderous madman. But to me, he could even be called someone with a good temper, nearly granting every request I had. I thought, if I couldn't rely on Bùi So, I'd let Veen Huyen Thua redeem me. His parents have passed away. He's still young, handsome, powerful, truly fitting to depend on for a lifetime. Furthermore, he controls the guard of brocade, certainly can help my family clear their injustices. But now I've changed my mind. I don't want to rely on a man my whole life, letting a man redeem me, becoming a concubine of a man, spending my life confined in the back quarters, waiting for a man's favor, and then dying in loneliness when I age. If my parents were still alive, they wouldn't want to see me live such a life. I want to live well, like an independent human being with dignity. What do you plan henceforth? An Tue wasn't angry. His expression remained calm. I didn't hide from him. I've saved enough for my redemption. After gaining freedom, I plan to open a medical shop. Years ago, when leaving the city, I saved a vagrant named Hagan. Later, I found out she came from a family of traditional medicine. During free times, I often learned medicine from her. She was grateful to me, didn't mind my status, nearly imparted all she knew. Over the years, I've secretly accompanied her outside the city treating people, advancing my skills remarkably. She said I could open my own medical shop. Last year, she got married, followed her husband north, left all her medical books to me when departing. I thought perhaps I could open a medical shop to support myself. I thought An Tue would mock me like Bùi so, but he just nodded. Not bad. If you ever need anything, come to me. I was stunned for a moment, this time smiling genuinely. Okay. The madam accepted my 2,000 taels, happily returned my sale contract. I gifted her the remaining jewelry. She also gave Thursday due to me. In the madam's eyes, I was something that couldn't earn enough to pay back, hoping I'd leave quickly. It took me and Thursday due a few days to finally rent a small house. I used the remaining money to buy some medicine cabinets and supplies, personally wrote a sign specializing in treating women's diseases, launching the business. Those years practicing medicine with Hagan, I witnessed many women tortured by illness. They often are women working hard since young, becoming ill, or getting diseases brought home by husbands from outside, enduring suffering but not daring to seek treatment due to face value. I want them to come confidently for treatment. The opening of the medical shop went better than I expected. Truly, at first there were none, but after the first brave person came, more and more people started coming. These women passed the word around. A while later, the shop bustled with people coming and going. Sometimes I was so busy I couldn't rest. That day, while weighing medicine, someone pulled the curtain to enter. I recognized her as someone I'd treated before. She suffered incessant bleeding after miscarriage. Her husband wouldn't allow her to see male doctors, dragged on until meeting me. After drinking several decoctions, her condition gradually stabilized. She handed me a bowl of dumplings. Made at home, Dr. Luke tried them. I smiled as I received. In merely 2 months, yet looking back on past days, it seemed like a lifetime ago. The painful days, controlled by others, are over. Now, I truly live the life I want, living as a human, living with dignity. As I was about to eat the dumplings, a loud noise suddenly echoed from outside. My hand trembled. The bowl fell to the floor, shattering. Several uniformed house servants rushed in. Behind them was courtesan. She wore a jade silk Van La dress, a set of round pearl jewelry on her head, looking extremely noble. Seeing me, her lips curled up. "Smash it for me." The servants immediately began to trash my shop. My carefully dried herbs were scattered everywhere. The patients also cried out in panic. I angrily said, "Miss Lu, what are you doing?" Courtesan stared at my face for a long time, eyes flashing with envy and resentment. "Bitch, are you still pretending to be innocent? Bùi postponed our wedding date. If not for you seducing, why would he treat me like this?" I was stunned, then explained, "I made it clear with Bùi so, no further dealings." Courtesan didn't heed my explanation. She shouted loudly to the surrounding patients. "I tell you what, she was a prostitute at New Lao before, a whore anyone could ride. Aren't you afraid of catching her sexual diseases by letting her treat you?" The crowd buzzed, chattered, pointed at me. Even the lady who just brought dumplings backed away, wide-eyed staring at me. Passers-by gathered to watch the commotion. Earlier, I'd complimented this doctor for looking beautiful. Turns out she's a prostitute. No wonder. Still call the doctor. Maybe she opened this shop to do that business. Looking proper. Turns out she's a whore. I intended a visit for treatment. Oh no, I went in last time, not sure if I caught anything. Standing amidst the crowd, watching the patients avoid me like a flood. Seeing the mocking stares of passers-by, I suddenly felt like the day I sold myself as a prostitute, stripped by the madam, branded by hot iron to agree to entertain guests. Lu Can Swan laughed arrogantly, approached me. Did you think leaving New Wai Lao, changing name would hide you? I'll let you know, you'll never lift your head in this life. Always be a whore. You seduced the wrong person. She scratched her sharp nails across my face. Your mistake is not knowing who you are. Bowie is mine. You shouldn't touch him. Then she waved her hand, instructing people to seize me. My body felt cold. I knew once taken by Lu Can Swan, the result would be grim, especially since her father holds power. Nobody would dare offend him for me. Just when I despaired, someone stepped in, using the back of a blade, slapped Lu Can Swan's hand. The slap wasn't light. She groaned, about to speak, but seeing the person made her pale. Mr. Vien Huyen Thua was famously cold. Lu Can Swan forced a smile. Mr. Vien, why are you here? Vien Huyen Thua didn't even glance at her, merely said coldly, get out. Lu Can Swan gritted her teeth, pointing at me. She's a whore, here, masquerading as a doctor. I simply don't like her harming people. Is Mr. Vien also under her spell? Here pitying her? My father is Lu's son, Minister of Revenue. Today, I must capture her. Dare you touch me? Vien Huyen Thua suddenly chuckled. Normally distant, yet when he smiles, a charming allure is revealed. But the smile was too cold. He drew his sword, placing it on Lu Can Swan's neck. The cold blade slashed a line across her neck. Fresh blood trickled down her collar. Vien Huyen Thua smirked. Miss Lu, even if your father were here, I kill as I wish. Lu Can Swan probably faced a blade for the first time. Legs trembling, pale, I smelled urine in the air. Looking down, Lu Can Swan's pants were wet. Vien Huyen Thua frowned, sheathed his sword, stepped back. Surrounding people laughed. Whose lady is this, peeing on the street? Didn't you hear her? She's Lu's son's daughter, a high official raising this kind of daughter. Oh, Stinky, move away. Lu Can Swan, scared and angry, even fainted. She was taken away. Then I finally reacted, thanked Vien Huyen Thua. Thanks to Mr. Vien. Why are you here? He paused. Official duty passed by. Then he handed me the jade pendant at his waist. In a few days, I must travel to Ha Dong, not being in the capital city. If someone comes looking for you to cause trouble, take this jade pendant to find the KMYVE. They will help you. After saying that, he left, holding the jade pendant. I couldn't help but burst out laughing. He claimed it was convenient for him. Clearly, he intentionally came to give me the jade pendant. But I didn't expose him, just smiled and said, Thank you, Lord Vien. My clinic can no longer remain open. Ever since Lu Can Swan spread rumors that I was once a prostitute, no one has come to seek my medical services anymore. The girl who previously brought dumplings also came to see me once more, stammering a few comforting words before hurriedly leaving. I understood her predicament. Associating with someone like me would harm her reputation. She's also a woman. Living is not easy. Worse still, people began asking to marry me. None of them are good families. They are all lazy and disabled men, or widowers who have previously beaten their wives to death. Bowie so arrived when I was being harassed by a hooligan. He jokingly attempted to reach out and touch my chin. You pretend to be chaste even though you are a prostitute? I'm not disdainful that you've slept with many men, so you should be grateful already, and you dare despise me? When I operated the clinic, he loitered around outside, and after it got sabotaged, he dared to come right in and has been bothering me, forcing me to marry him for days now. I'm incredibly frustrated, not knowing what to do. While contemplating whether to use the jade pendant that Vien Huyen Thua gifted me, A hand suddenly appeared, a fan slapping the hooligan's face, causing him to fall to the ground, clutching his face in pain. Moments later, he spat out 2 blood-covered teeth. Bùi so showed contempt, throwing the fan down, looking down at me from above. "Is this the life you want after leaving me?" I bit my lip without saying a word. Seeing me in such a pitiful state, Bùi so seemed to be in a better mood. "And Tuesday, come back to me. You don't need to endure such hardships." I turned my head, silently refusing. Bùi so paused. "I heard Luke and Swan caused trouble for you the other day. Was it An Tue who helped you?" He smirked. "You're not aiming for him, are you? His mother is the Princess Convey, not only the Emperor's most beloved niece, but also the most trusted confidant, truly born noble. Don't think you can do anything now. Even if the Luke family hadn't been confiscated, you could only be his concubine. What delusion do you have?" I finally couldn't stand it, clenched my fist, glaring at him. "Bùi so, I am not like you, who sees themselves as a gambling chip to climb up. Maybe I used to be, but now I no longer want it." I sarcastically retorted. "You want to sell yourself to the Liu family, but I no longer wish to sell myself to any man." Unexpectedly, Bùi so did not get angry. He raised his eyebrows. "So you're still mindful of Luke and Swan?" "Don't worry. Lu's son now is weak and old. The Emperor has implicitly hinted that he should resign. When he retires, the Ministry of Finance will be mine. Then, I will deal with Luke and Swan. I don't want this fool to be my wife." I lightly chuckled. "So you'll marry me as your main wife?" Bùi so remained silent for a moment. "And Tuesday, you know your current status. I will walk the path of officialdom. I can't have a spouse who can be a blemish on me." He seemed to compromise a lot. "Besides the title, I can give you everything. Isn't that enough?" I couldn't listen further, turned and walked away. Behind, Bùi so's cold voice echoed. "Luke and Tuesday apart from me. Who else will want you? You have no other choice but marrying me." I said nothing. I didn't turn back. Suddenly, I remembered Hagon's words when teaching me medicine. In this world, women struggle to survive because they have no foundation to stand on their own, relying solely on men. And Tuesday, I teach you medicine hoping that when you're freed, you won't need to rely on men to live. At that time, my mind was wholly on Bùi so, somewhat careless. Bùi so will redeem me in the future. I will not live miserably. She just smiled, gently stroking my hair. "Someday, you'll understand, there is no one you can rely on in this world. If you depend on men, when they're sick of you, won't give you an escape, you will have no means to navigate. The path you walk alone, though difficult, is yours, one no one can take. I need no guidance anymore. I will pave my own path. In sweltering August, ominous news came from An Tue. 3 cities are plagued with disease, with bodies scattered everywhere. The death toll has become countless. Hearing this, my entire body felt like falling into an ice pit. An Tue, that's where Hagon resides. I gathered my belongings without a second thought and immediately set off for An Tue. Thursday, do help me crying. Miss, the people of An Tue are on the brink of death. It's an epidemic. Going there is in vain." But I ignored her plea, urging the horse quickly towards An Tue. I couldn't just wait here. Even with a sliver of hope, I must go save Hagon. Rushing for half a month, I finally arrived at An Tue. The situation was worse than rumors. In the city, stench assaulted my senses. Corpses were strewn everywhere, not yet burned. The streets were deserted, rarely seeing a trace of people. I searched for days and finally found Hagon in a clinic outside the city. Her husband passed away in the epidemic, but she had no time for sorrow, still distributing disease prevention medicine to people. Seeing me arrive, instinctively she wanted to scold me, but said nothing, stepped forward and embraced me. Years of separation made her visibly thin, her delicate shoulders were frail. Her body shook slightly, seemingly exhausted. We hugged silently, no words needed. In the days following, I joined Ha Gan in treating the afflicted daily. More people died. The plague could only be prevented, not cured, and we endlessly witnessed countless deaths. Amid stifling heat, repeatedly facing added trouble, several days of heavy rain, floodwater breached the dike. Now, adding flood troubles, epidemics spread at lightning speed. At this point, Hagan also fell ill. We were busy every day outside the city. Yet even wearing steam cloth and being extremely careful, she was hard-pressed to avoid it all. I cried beside her bed, yet she smiled, urging me to leave. I have no regrets now. I should have died along with my parents in the famine years ago. You helped me live these extra days. I'm fulfilled. Go. And Tuesday, you've done your best, and you have a broad future ahead. Don't stay here with me. I shook my head in tears, holding her tightly. I will take you back to the city. Surely we'll find a way to save you. Back in the city, I sat dazed in my room. In days past distributing medicine, I ran out of supplies and coins. But just when I was at the most despair, worse news struck. Vien Huynh Thua also came to Hadyung. He too had contracted the disease. When I found Vien Huynh Thua, he was laying on the bed, not looking too gaunt, just somewhat pale. Black hair lay spread on the porcelain pillow. The usual icy demeanor seemed to fade. Seeing me, he sighed softly. "What are you doing here?" Not afraid of catching it. I clasped the blanket tight. "I should ask why you are here. Is this your official duty?" His young servant, D. Mac, whispered. "The gentleman came because he heard Miss Lin Kyo went to Hadyung, hurried here to take her. Now here he lies ill while the miss has no issue." Vien Huynh Thua cast a glance. D. Mac promptly fell silent. When I consulted with doctors outside, I learned Vien Huynh Thua was not as well as he appeared. He had been unwell long before. If he hadn't caught wind of news, he might still hide it from me. After administering medicine to him, he fell asleep, and I sat beside the bed, carefully observing his face. I did not understand why he came for me. To me, we might have some feelings, but to what extent? Initially, he wanted to redeem me. Later, he helped me escape dire circumstances. Now, hearing I was at Hadyung, he came to rescue me. What virtues or talents do I possess for him to treat me like that? I began frantically reading medical books, experimenting with herbs. Every day, I locked myself in the room, candle burning out one after another, my eyes stinging till blurred. Everyone urged me to rest, but I dared not. Hagan and Vien Huynh Thua awaiting me to rescue them. Early each morning, before daylight, I climbed hills picking herbs. Once nearly fell off a cliff, almost breaking a leg. I tested on myself, browsed countless medical books. Not one recorded a remedy for this plague. Days and nights plagued by nightmares, wandering like in a fog, yet dare not pause. I watched them weakening daily, feared with rest. Hagan and Vien Huynh Thua could wait no longer to tea night, preparing to attempt another remedy. Unexpectedly saw many boxes and chests in my room. The chests were filled with jewels and silver, even 2 chests of promissory notes. "What's this?" I grabbed D. Mac, the person who delivered the items. His nose was red, clearly just crying. The gentleman instructed me to bring them to Miss, saying these possessions are hers to use for wealth in the future. These items were immensely valuable, beyond my imagination, but at this moment I didn't glance at them, only felt trembling all over. Why did Vien Huynh Thua give me all these belongings? Did he believe he could no longer endure? I dashed into his room. In just days his figure had slimmed drastically, his long pale fingers gently coughing against his lips. "Vien Huynh Thua, why did you have someone bring these things to me?" His voice was slightly hoarse, yet still calm. "Just gifting you some belongings. A woman with wealth beside her is better." I tried fervently to repress tears from falling. Did the medicine work today? He shook his head lightly. Days passed. I attempted numerous remedies on patients. Any that had little effect, I administered to Vien Huynh Thua and Hagan, but seemed futile. I staggered back to my room, not remembering how I collapsed asleep. Before this, I hadn't shut my eyes for 3 days. I was too exhausted. I couldn't persist anymore. An Tue and Hagon's conditions were deteriorating rapidly. Initially, both could stay awake for moments to speak a few words, but soon both fell into unconsciousness, with many doctors arriving only to shake their heads, declaring incapable of saving them. But I was determined not to accept that time and time again, changing the medicine. Finally, one day, when I went down from the mountain, I was exhausted and fainted. In a dream, after a long time, I dreamt about my parents. In the dream, they didn't say anything, just sorrowfully caressed my head. I hugged them and cried out, "Father, Mother, what should I do now? They are the most important people to me. I cannot live without them." But before they could say anything, I was shaken awake. When I woke up, I was lying in the room, my whole body aching and wounds everywhere. In a daze, I saw a tear-soaked face, crying and laughing. Thursday Dew was furiously wiping away her tears. "Young lady, don't you care about your life anymore?" Then she burst out laughing. "Master Veen and Miss Har are awake. The medicine worked?" The 328th medicine I tried finally worked. It included a herb I read about in a medical book and picked on my own from the mountain. Initially, I didn't dare use it, but after testing on myself without any issues and on other patients, I finally dared to administer it to Hagon and An Tue. When I went to their room, both were awake. Though still weak, An Tue could drink a few sips of porridge, and Hagon gently asked for water. When she saw me, Hagon grabbed my hand. The plague had worn her down, but her eyes still shone brightly and kindly as ever. She said, "And Tuesday, thank you." My medicine was quickly spread everywhere, and the concoction was distributed to the people all over. Initially, there weren't enough ingredients. Later, we had to swiftly transfer supplies from elsewhere, and 2 months later the plague began to be controlled. An Tue and Hagon slowly recovered. An Tue didn't stay long. Once well, he immediately returned to the capital. Half a month later, when Hagon and I were studying the medicinal ingredients, suddenly heard the sound of lively drums and gongs outside. Looking outside, a group of dozens of people approached, led by a eunuch with a pale, beardless face. He smiled and pulled out a bright golden imperial edict. "Miss Luke, receive the edict." In a daze, I instinctively knelt down. In compliance with heaven's mandate, the emperor decrees. The common woman Luke and Tuesday, intelligent and virtuous, understanding the rights, this time risked her life to save people. Quelling the plague brings great peace and comfort to me. Thus I specially appoint her as county princess title. Baunin, granting 100 rolls of silk, 5,000 taels of silver, along with 100 households in Ha Jung's district. This is the imperial order. The next day, I followed Mr. Hong back to the court to thank the emperor. When leaving, the village folks arrived early before dawn to see me off, stuffing my carriage full of dried vegetables, duck eggs, and dried meat. They had no money, but this was the best they could give me. "Miss Luke, please return to visit us often." "Thank you, Miss Luke. You saved my entire family. I've lit an everlasting lamp for you. Bodhisattva surely will bless you with a long life, 100 years. Miss Luke, safe travels." They continued to run after my carriage, continuously waving until they could no longer see my silhouette. I lowered the curtain of the carriage, wiped my eyes dry, could not help but smile. Until kneeling in the Kim Loan Hall, I still felt like dreaming. A few months ago, I was still a courtesan despised by the world. Yet now I have become County Princess Bao Nin of noble standing. 2 eyes continuously turned toward me. When looking to the left, Bùi so stood in the crowd, his gaze deep and unfathomable, expressionless. Looking to the right, An Tue stood at the forefront, smiling and nodding at me. From above, the solemn voice of the emperor rang out. "Luke and Tuesday, you have made great contributions by quelling the plague, helping the populace. Naming you as county princess is still insufficient reward. Do you have any additional requests?" I was stunned, felt as if an invisible wind had arisen. In that moment, many faces flashed before my eyes, but none clear. My forehead touched the ground, speaking each word clearly. Your Majesty. And Tuesday is only the nickname of this humble daughter. My real name is Luke Kim, and surrounding officials began to murmur, not understanding why I mentioned this. I thought I would tremble, but my voice remained steady. In the 13th year of the Tang Nguyen, the Luke family was wrongfully accused of conspiracy, seizing the people's land, the entire family of 72 people sentenced to execution. My father risked his life to get me out. In his lifetime, Father was loyal to Your Majesty, upright and selfless. I respectfully beg Your Majesty to reinvestigate the case of the Luke family from back then. Return justice to my family's name. The entire court buzzed with noise. The complexion of Bùi so finally changed, staring at me in shock. Vien Huynh Thua kneeled beside me. Your Majesty, these past days, the Cam Y guards have thoroughly investigated the true circumstances of the Luke family case. The Luke gentleman was indeed defamed by scoundrels. All evidence is here. I swung around quickly, only saw him pulling out a small box. The eunuch beside promptly presented it. I dare not raise my head. The emperor perused the evidence for a long while before speaking. Approved. The next time I heard news about Luke and Swan was when she contracted the plague. Heard she went out to the mansion in the outskirts, bumped into a refugee. She went into a rage, used a whip to beat the person to death. She didn't know the person had long contracted the plague. As soon as she returned home, she fell ill. Humorously, the Liu family invited me to treat her. When meeting Luke and Swan, I almost didn't recognize her. Previously, she wasn't exactly a beauty, but at least delicate. But now she is as thin as a reedy twig, eyes hollowed, skin sallow, hair dry as straw, no longer resembling the image of a noble young lady of old. Seeing me, she struggled to sit up, endlessly spewing vile words. Is it you? Why didn't you die in Hajiang? Bùi Lang has broken off the marriage with me. Is it because of you, you fox have seduced him? Vile, how dare you claim to be a county princess? I will definitely have my father submit a petition to the emperor. You are a courtesan, will forever remain a filthy and disgraceful courtesan. I waved my hand for the maid to leave, slowly walked over, pulled out a copper mirror and showed it to her face. If I were Bùi, I wouldn't want to be with you either. Look at yourself now. Luke and Swan was appalled to extreme terror, smashed the mirror, clawed at her own face. My face, my face. She obviously had no strength to sit up, but still furiously reached out, intending to strike me, grinding teeth as if facing a nemesis. You were just a courtesan, yet Bùi Lang put all his affection into you, visiting you daily, even did not hesitate to break the engagement with me for you. My father is the Minister of Revenue. I devotedly loved him. Over the years my father helped him so much. Why did he treat me this way? She wept and laughed like a mad woman, stretching out her nails trying to slap me. But I flipped my hand, gripping her wrist, delivered a strong slap on her face. How dare you hit me? She couldn't believe it. I straightly slapped again. She fell back onto the bed, panting heavily, her eyes overflown with resentment, glaring at me, but unable to sit up anymore. Watching her complexion, I generally knew what her disease was. The plague in the south, when spread to the north, mutated slightly, thus the old medicine no longer effective, but it's also not hard to cure, just adding 2 more ingredients. But why should I save her? I wiped my hands clean with a handkerchief and stepped out of the room. This young lady's disease I cannot treat. Better find another skilled physician. The Minister of Revenue and Madame Liu slumped down. Madame Liu coughed intensely. I looked no further, turned around, and stepped outside. I had nothing to pity for them. Luke and Swan growing up harmed countless people. Their upbringing failed, now considered as their karma. 3 days later, the Liu house hung mourning banners. Luke and Swan died. It is said that when she died, she was extremely miserable, her whole body bruised. mouth continuously calling Bùi So's name. Yet Bùi So never once came to see her. The wrongful case of the Luke family and Zhang family finally got rectified after 3 months. I carried a bottle of wine, sat before my parents' grave for a day, muttering and reciting so much even I didn't know what I was talking about anymore. The burden over the years finally lifted. I just felt extremely tired. In spring, flowers blooming brightly, An Tue personally came to propose to me. I lowered my head for a long while before speaking. Although now I'm a county princess in this capital city, those with some notoriety know what I used to do. Are you not afraid of the world's ridicule to marry me? Gossip sharper than swords. Even Bùi So, who grew up beside me, also didn't want to marry me because I was once a courtesan. Does An Tue truly not mind at all? An Tue listened without saying anything, then left. I thought he had regrets, feeling heartbroken, but the next day unexpectedly received an imperial edict. The emperor bestowed marriage upon me and An Tue. How could this be? An Tue is the emperor's beloved. Why would he let him marry me? Mac brought gifts to my house, laughing while telling. A while back, my gentleman solved the treason case. At that time, the emperor asked what reward he wanted. He said he hadn't thought of it. Now, using that merit to obtain an imperial edict of betrothal with young lady. Young lady now can be at ease. The emperor personally sanctioned the marriage. No one will dare say anything anymore. Before the wedding, unable to meet face to face, An Tue climbed over the wall, sat outside the window to talk to me. I asked him, "Why do you want to marry me? Is it because I once saved you as a child? You developed feelings for me then. And when first meeting me in the brothel, you immediately recognized me, vowing not to marry anyone but me." An Tue chuckled. "If you no longer want to be a county princess, later you can write stories for a living." I was puzzled, then why? He pondered a moment. "Don't really know. Perhaps because there's a form of indomitable strength in you. Strive to survive no matter the circumstances. Initially, I just found it interesting, but the more I look, the more I cannot turn away. Besides, repaying a saving grace with body and matrimony. You save me. Naturally, I must give myself to repay you." A long, graceful hand reached in from outside the window, a hand that once sturdy when wielding blade, now gently holding my hand gently. "On Tuesday, why has it been so long?" He sighed. "I truly cannot wait anymore." After An Tue left, intending to rest, but the window was pushed open again. Helplessly turning around. "Why have you come back?" I said the wedding was nearly here. Please wait. I paused. Bùi So, soaked in liquor, climbed in from the outside, eyes bloodshot, like he hadn't slept in a while. He opened his mouth, hoarse voice. "You're about to get married." I stepped back a step, warily said, "Why are you here?" Bùi So pulled out the marriage certificate from his chest that I thought he had torn up long ago, took a step forward. "Is she about to get married? Then what is this and what am I?" I couldn't help but laugh. "You used to say that I was lowly and unworthy of you, that you couldn't marry me. So why do you want to come back now?" "Bùi So, you once said I shouldn't regret. Now I don't, but do you regret it?" Bùi So stared at me, and when I thought he wouldn't say anything more, he quietly spoke. "Yes, I regret it. And Tuesday, we have been betrothed since we were young. You should be my wife. How can you marry someone else?" The emperor personally bestowed the marriage. If you want to ask about this, you should ask him. Do you want me to defy the emperor's decree? All right, I wave my hand impatiently. I want to sleep. You go quickly. Bùi So grabbed my hand. "And Tuesday, let's run away to a place where no one knows us. Even if the emperor has bestowed the marriage, I will take you away." The strength of a drunkard is truly surprising. The pain made me take a sharp breath. "Go? Where to? Don't you need your career anymore?" "No need," he anxiously said. "No need anymore. I will not be an official anymore. We will go to Jiangnan, to the place you love. We will live together, have children. We will—" I never thought Bùi so could say such things. His career was everything to him, yet now he wants to elope with me, abandoning everything. Before he could finish, I slapped him across the face. You're crazy. Bùi, so when I was miserable, you pushed me to the abyss, and now when I'm better off, you want to take me away. Can't you stand that I'm doing better? When you were near death, I sold myself to save you. When you took exams, I performed to earn money to support you. I owe you nothing. I will not go with you. I coldly said, I already told you. The road is wide. You and I each have our own paths. From the day you said you wouldn't marry me, our fate ended. Bùi so touched his face in a daze. Long after, a tear appeared in his eyes. But in Tuesday, his voice trembled. What should I do now? I turned my back to him. Behind me, there was silence for a long time, and when I turned back, Bùi so had already left. In the yard, the early spring peach blossoms were in full bloom, dropping gently under the moonlight. I suddenly remembered when he used to climb over my wall as a child. It was spring, and peach blossoms were covering the ground. He said to me, Hey, An Tue, your family has betrothed you to me. Did you know? I vaguely asked, what is betrothal? He laughed. It means becoming husband and wife. We will be together forever. Kong Tin, your heart is not yet still. The abbot shook his head at the young monk kneeling on the ground. Bùi so lowered his head and quietly said, I know. After leaving Luke and Tuesday's house that day, he resigned and went up to a mountain to become a monk. Half a lifetime striving for officialdom, even selling his conscience to achieve it, now suddenly meaningless. Years of hard struggles amounted to nothing. He gave himself the Dharma name Kong Tin, hoping his heart would become still, yet his heart seemed unable to be peaceful. The abbot left. In the distance, the sound of gongs and drums seemed to resound. He paused to ask the monk next to him, Why are there sounds of gongs and drums? The monk listened for a while. Isn't today, when Supervisor Veen was to wed Princess Baonin? The monk laughed. The mountain is so far. How could we hear it? Maybe you heard wrong. Misheard? The joyful sounds seemed to echo right beside him. In the peach orchard, in full bloom, Bùi so seemed to see Luke and Tuesday.